Today is the 14th of January 2015. I'm with Brother Asadullah Fez, who's going to give me some insight into his research, and I'm going to ask some questions around the factors that I want to understand better from his experience and interventions with violent extremists. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take it off research जो है
You can even continue in English.
Okay. Your research was from understanding the head of the snake, so to speak, and what was it that you uncovered or discovered as a part of your research?
Right now, I have primarily focused on those elements in that situation where the radical element has turned violent and militant and resorted to even terrorist activities. And when we look at it from this angle, then it's not just the local socio-economic factors. Then it's a part of a great game. And I also observed that such narrative is so abundantly available on social media that even the educated youth, the students of engineering, and even a guy just returned from America. He was doing graduation there in University of Texas, and even other many young educated youth. They have such a strong conviction and narrative now, and now this narrative is based on a corollary of West versus Islam, and this is the most, in my opinion, the most alarming and most difficult area now to address, because okay, if someone is falling prey to all these things just because of poverty or social factors, I think it's doable. But what about that young educated lot who has built up this mindset at its own just by accessing available literature on social media? And now their perception is that after 9/11, when US invaded Afghanistan, and then in 2004 US invaded Iraq, these are not two driving factors to turn educated moderate youth into radical element and finally resorting to militant activities. And they have very clear version that all US and West allies are not together against Islam. They also owe its origin to the theory of clash of civilization and Fukuyama, and what is his theory, end of civilization. You can imagine how educated they are, and like they narrate the atrocities perpetrated in Abu Ghraib jail in Iraq. They quote the atrocities in Guantanamo Bay prison, and they from there they build a mindset that now it's a global international war between West and Islam. This is the most alarming and most alarming factor of radicalism in this region. And it's not within this region. I think now it's a transboundary phenomenon.
Your subject group, and I know it's sensitive because I've been trying for the past 7 weeks to try and get access. Tell me about your subject group. Who were they? Where were they from? And how many people were you able to speak to?
Actually, the turning point was now the forces who are really trying to eliminate this element. It was created by them as well during the Afghan war against Soviet Union. So it's the foundation lies there, and during that era in 70s and 80s, they were the heroes. They were jihadi fighters, and even they were prepared in the name of jihad that you are fighting against infidels who have invaded Afghanistan. But then, after withdrawal of Soviet forces, all these groups were left completely abandoned, and there was no rollback strategy. You had built up a monster. Like if you have trained the youngsters who know nothing other than carrying a gun and fighting with the enemy, there was no rollback strategy to re-merge them back to the normal social life. So they were then taken up by these radical elements, and here are transboundary interaction of these jihadi elements occurred. Like there are so many movements, like very famous movement, Islamic movement in Uzbekistan, and like other Central Asian republics. Then all the freedom fighters, so-called, or the Arab freedom fighters from Middle East, they also penetrated in this area. And if you look at the literature and the history, we also find a tribal lineage between all these groups, because all the jihadi element which came from Middle East, like Al Qaeda offshoot, and now the recent phenomenon of ISIS, and then the Taliban in a bigger picture, they also have tribal origin. Like if you look at at the origin of Al Qaeda, it originated from the tribal area of Arabs, and they also have tribal lineage. So this area provided them a very fertile ground. Like the tribals of Pakistani belt living in FATA, federally administered tribal area, and KP, they also traditionally had a Pashtun Wali code, a social code, which is based on basic fundamentals of hospitality, protection and refuge, then honor, and what else? Nanavati, uh, Tega Milmestia, and Badal, the revenge. So the wherever you go, even in Middle East, more or less you will find a lot of similarities between the tribal code of conduct. So this area provided them a easy hunting ground, and so they penetrated towards Pakistan as well. Because before 2001, in Afghanistan there was no strong central government, and there were different warlords in name of Taliban or whatsoever, or on ethnic basis. They were fighting with each other, and it all was just a power struggle. So after 9/11 and invasion of US, they got a binding force in the name of West versus Islam. After Soviet withdrawal for 10 years, they just kept roaming around to find some other common enemy or common objective. So after 9/11 and invasions in this area, bombardment of that the tribal area, drone attacks, which might have targeted appropriate elements, but collateral damage, yes, definitely was done to the innocent people as well. So it is now a new way. Now it has a very strong ideology. And although this monster was created by the state and non-state actors, and even the foreign elements, and even we can say at that time US, they all were involved, and they at that time they were good Taliban because they were fighting against Soviets. So now they have found a new ideology. And then they further strengthened this ideology by linking and associating everything with religion. And unfortunately, this element has been completely ignored, and we have never taken care of building Now we not just need a national narrative, but now there should be an international narrative. That's the only thing to counter the narrative that they already have, which has made their mindset. But I don't think, or I don't see that any such conscious effort is being made to develop a synergy among all the stakeholders. No, it's not just the issue of Pakistan or Afghanistan. No, all the stakeholders, US, West, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, even China, Central Asian states, unless a concerted, coherent global effort is made, it's very difficult to counter these means.
Tell me more about this new ideology. What is it that they espouse? What is the ideology? From your experience of interviewing these people, what are they saying to you?
Yes, I told you it's basically a clash of civilization.
Okay.
It's Huntington's theory is now, you are bearing the fruit. And even some of the such concepts of Ummah, Muslim Ummah, and Muslims living in every corner of the world are one nation and we are bound to help each other. This is a very strong sentiment right now. And even the educated youth has a romance with this sentiment. Like they would mention the letters of Noor and Fatma, who were probably raped in Abu Ghraib jail. So they think that it's their responsibility, personal responsibility, to protect each and every person of Muslim world, all around the world.
Um, there's some questions that I had that were intended for the people that you spoke to that I've not had the opportunity to. So I'm just going to try and filter out some of these as best as possible. There's a term that's bounced around quite often, Muslim violent extremism, and it's often conflated with jihad. Do they consider the two to be the same? So is Muslim violent extremism the same as jihad, or do they differentiate?
This one?
Yeah. According to their perspective, how do they see their actions?
Um, they they are so much emotionally associated with this notion that I think this is the main driving force. And if you talk to them, they would justify each and every act by narrating some verse from the Holy Book, or some saying of the Prophet, or some incident of the history. And but at the same time, I would like to iterate categorically that it all is misinterpreted. But somehow they have drawn such interpretations and influences from religion and from this concept of jihad, that mentally they are completely mesmerized with this concept. And like one of the person, radical element, young youth, educated youth, he narrated a verse of Surah Al-Anfal, ayah number 16. That's in para 10. وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ وَمِنْ رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ تُرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ وَعَدُوَّكُمْ. And here the word turhabun, it is you can say a linchpin of their ideology. Turhabun, as we have studied in Quran, the whole meaning is that you get ready to fight with the enemies with all the strength and capacity you have, and keep your weapons and horses ready, so that your awe is created. You terrify your enemies enemies of Allah and your enemies with your preparation. This so Turabun, yes, literal meaning is to create a knot, clarify, and they derive from it that it means dahshatgard. They say that the subject of Turabun is a verb, and the subject is Rehabi. And Rehabi, literal meaning in dictionary is terrorist.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, in a way, if you just go for the dictionary, yes, it can just be, but where is the reference to the context?
Yes, yes.
And then the most important thing is that these verses were being revealed at that time according to a particular situation as well. If you take even this verse in literal terms, then it means you also shouldn't use the modern weaponry. There is clearly written weapons and horses. You just rely on horses and arrows and spears and sword. So, but they just pick one word and they take it in a literal meaning without narrating any reference to the context. And even above all, I think an active dialogue by a religious leader should be initiated that all these instant instructions were at the time of Prophet, peace be upon him. And there are many things which are, as far as some actions are concerned, they have direct relevance to that period. And Rasul, there is a difference between Rasul and Nabi. Rasul means that many of the things end with his demise. Many of the actions were supposed to do at that time. Like you can study the concept of concubines. Should it be continued? It was not continued because it was in a particular context. So same is the case here, but those verses are being misinterpreted, and I think this is a time for intelligentsia of Muslim world, and even I would say there should be an interfaith dialogue. That's the only solution to counter this narrative. So this time, the main issue is to counter the narrative.
So, understanding from the people that you've spoken to, they've identified a problem, which is, in a nutshell, global Muslim oppression. If I'm right in understanding, they feel obliged to do something to help ease that oppression. And they feel that that obligation is religiously inspired and their actions are religiously justified. That's right in understanding so far. So their goal through their actions is to try and help the global Muslim community who's suffering. And in doing so, they choose a particular action, whether it's to go and bomb somebody or kill somebody. Were you able to understand how that action is selected? Who chooses that course of action? So if somebody wants to go and blow themselves up in the middle of the fortress, for example, whose idea was that? And how will that contribute towards achieving their overall goal?
Yes, this prevalence of such sentiment and mindset is definitely being exploited as well. And if we look at it from that angle, ultimately it's a power struggle. There are certain groups, like I just give you one example that these Taliban element was not involved so much in narcotics trade in 70s and 80s. because they were getting a lot of money from
CIA.
the international actors, state actors, non-state actors. But now they are used to it. Now they are intoxicated with that aura of power, and now basically it's a political game. And you look at the history, all happened, all atrocities, all massacres. They all basically were the was the political game, power struggle. You look at the Crusades, you look at Islamic history, Umayyads, Abbasi, Fatimi, they all killed each other like butcher. The Muslims killed Muslims. Then in crusades in the name of religion. So religion, has always been a very strong motivating force. And if you look at the overall killings in terms of humanity, I think the maximum number of killings are in the name of religion.
So, yeah.
So it always, but ultimately there is also a power struggle. There are certain groups who want to achieve ultimate absolute power. So they are using these elements. They dictate them where to target or how to target. And other things that they narrate Quran and they narrate the plight of Muslim world. These are basically sporting arguments. If they are so pious and so religious, why are they not so much into narcotics trade? Now there is a direct nexus between terrorism and narcotics because it's an easy money. They definitely need money to carry on all these activities.
Yes.
Unless otherwise they are supported by someone as they were being supported in 80s by US, Saudi Arabia, and some of the Shia segments by Iran. So now they are even not getting support. Now they are also managing their resources as well. And then I think internationally, it's not just Pakistan's problem. Internationally, we have to be very clear about that these are radical elements. These are Taliban. They are bad. There is no selective option that these are good Taliban. These are bad Taliban. These are good radicals. They are bad radicals. We have to make a clear objective, first of all, for us, whom to target. And whomsoever to target, then it should be collective, across the board, without any bias. That's the only solution.
And in speaking to these individuals that you were able to get access to, were they at all remorseful?
Not at all. They say if they get 100 lives, they will do the same. And when you talk about Pakistan, that why you do it against your Pakistani brothers, Muslim brothers, innocent children, they deny it. They say it's not our message.
So they think they're justified?
Yes, absolutely.
Wholly.
Absolute.
Do they feel as though they've been rewarded by Allah for their actions, even though they've not been successful?
They are doing it for a great reward in the world afterward, hereafter.
Okay.
And they are so much intoxicated with the concept of Hur, 72 maidens of heaven.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are very few elements as well who have joined them just out of revenge. Because their relatives, their families were damaged and destroyed as a even if as a collateral damage. Yes, but that element is in a minority, and they are not major player as well.
Mm.
Major player is someone else,
Yes.
and it's not just things are just cropping up. It was planted, and maybe I don't have that much information that it was planted with some other objective. Sometimes your own monster
Mm.
gets out of the closet.
It is. Mm.
So the subsequent events and other uh, incidents occurred in such a manner that probably the whole scheme of things failed. Because if you talk about real politics and Machiavellian sort of politics,
Mm.
uh, there is a history of creating monster to
Mm.
counter an
Mm.
existing monster.
Mm.
It's very common.
Mm.
And but all such moves have been successful when you had a proper rollback strategy.
Yes.
Like I can give you one example of Mukti Bani. It was created by India at the time of separation of Pakistan, East Pakistan. But then they afterward completely abandoned it. Now you would have never heard the existence of Mukti Bani later on.
Mm.
So this is a great game. It's not that simple, just localized and the feelings of deprivations and social economic
Mm.
factors.
Mm.
It's a great game, and it has to be dealt with the same way.
Yeah.
All the parts, all the regional global parts, all now I think the whole world is a stakeholder.
Yeah.
No one is safe.
Mm.
Just you look in
Yes.
France,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
you look at Peshawar incident.
Mm.
No one is safe. And if we think that now it is just Pakistan's issue or Afghanistan's issue, I think everybody is wrong.
Mm.
Unless you take it as a global issue and global efforts are made,
Mm.
there is no solution to it.
Mm. Mm.
And with a complete sincerity of the purpose.
Mm.
Even if some big player is trying to play this game of West versus Islam,
Yeah.
we have to get out of it.
Mm. So, in their chosen course of action, violence, whatever it may be, and I don't know what the people that you've spoken to were arrested for. I don't know what their activity allegations were. Um,
That is given what I send you the mail.
yeah,
All
excellent.
that is mentioned.
Is it? Do you think that they would have been willing to compromise their action to choose another action in pursuit of the same goal?
They give Pakistani state one breathing option. That Pakistani state declares in clear terms that it is no more allied with US or NATO forces.
Okay.
This is only just one breathing
Okay.
space for Pakistani state.
That's it. And if they do that,
Hmm.
then they're willing
Yeah, yeah.
to change their view.
To the extent of Pakistani law.
Okay, okay, okay. But if they don't do that,
Yeah.
then the attacks carry
Yes.
on. Did they give any justification for a suicide mission? Did they provide any?
Many. Yes, they quote example of Jange Mama for Ibn Salman Kazan.
Mm, mm, mm.
Some of the Muslims were sent as you can say to some extent
To the death.
assassins or suicide attackers
Mm,
because their fort was very strong and so they have justification for everything. They have derived everything from history, from books, from religion,
mm,
and it's a sheer failure of intelligentsia of Islamic Muslim world.
mm. To counteract narrative.
Yeah, and still, yes, another very important factor is that we still have four school of Sharia.
Mm.
Anfi Malki Amli and Bhabi.
Mm.
It's now around how many years?
Mm.
1400 years.
14 years, what, 40 years? No, 13 years.
And we have not made any addition. And they were also, yes, they were men of eminence, prominence, piety. We don't challenge.
Mm.
But after 1400 years,
Mm.
can those human efforts of interpretation of the message of Allah
Mm.
can be valid till today?
It's interesting. Mm. Mm.
You will not find even a single way ahead as far as Islamic jurisprudence is concerned.
Mm.
And even we consider it as a sin
Mm.
just to think about it that we look at it with a new perspective.
Yes. Yes. Okay. It's interesting. So a possible contributing factor
Yeah.
is the failure of the ulama to.
Yes.
So I agree with that.
And now we have many such scholars.
Mm.
But even we don't see that any national debate or international debate has been generated on this issue.
Mm.
We don't find any.
Yeah.
Why can't we start interfaith dialogue?
Mm.
Then, as far as Pakistan is concerned, yes, failure of state are, is a very important factor,
Mm.
and particularly our confusion uh, about opting or not opting Islam fully.
Mm.
Our problem is the confusion.
Mm.
Okay, if you want to make it a Islamic country in true sense, okay, go for it.
Mm.
But then the problem is which kind of Sharia? Anfi Sharia,
Mm.
Malki Sharia,
Yeah.
Hamli,
Yeah.
Wahhabi,
Yeah.
or Ahle Tashih.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any way forward,
Mm.
then okay, at least you try to separate religion from state,
Mm.
as Indonesia did.
Mm.
And they are not bad Muslim. I think they are even better Muslim than we are.
Mm.
So when you come to the polity,
Mm.
then you have to deliberate and think rationally according to the situation, according to the needs of the time. Like how this orthodox element kept thriving. It started from 1947
Mm.
when objective resolution was made part of the constitution. Objective resolution was speech of the Qaid in 1940
Mm.
when two nation theory was built,
Mm.
that Muslims and Hindus are two different religions, two different nations, two different cultures,
Mm.
and they cannot live with each other.
Mm.
That's fine. But in 1947,
Mm.
can we apply the same? It means that we will not allow a single Hindu to live here
Mm.
because he is a different nation.
Mm. Mm.
But still, we incorporated objective resolution,
Mm.
that address of 1940 in our constitution.
Mm. Mm.
And then we had no plan how to take care of it because I'm not against religion, but it's not easy to handle religion when you particularly link it with state.
Mm.
As a personal affair, probably it's very easy
Mm.
because it's my personal affair.
Mm.
Whatsoever I interpret, I offer my prayer, keeping my hands here or
Mm. Mm.
keeping it open.
Mm.
That's not an issue.
Mm.
But when you try to impose it on statehood
Mm.
and polity,
Mm.
then it's a different ball.
Mm.
And no conscious effort was made since 1947 that we have inculcated this seed uh, without any plan, and then the state also failed. You look at Swat movement of Nizam-e Hadar.
Mm.
It started as a popular movement in 1989. And they again derive its origin from the constitution.
Mm.
That you have written in constitution, it would be an Islamic state and all the principles of Islam and Allah would be implemented here. Then why not in Gandhi?
Yeah.
But ultimately, you look at the fate and outcome of that movement. What happened? Taliban courts were established. Open flogging of women happened. You might have seen many such videos.
It's fascinating. I think that overlaps and slightly pulls away from the area of my research, how Pakistan has contributed to the development or provided, I suppose, a pocket for this radical element to develop. Looking back retrospectively to either state failures, religious failures, and inevitably there are elements of social and economic factors within that as well. But like you also mentioned in your sample, there were people who were intelligent, educated, socially integrated that fell prey to this narrative,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm particularly interested in understanding. How that narrative is formed, how it's built, how it's espoused, how it's received, how it's encoded and decoded to the point where it's willing or able to influence people to the point where they are willing to, do these kind of acts. But the background that you've provided has been very, very, very beneficial. How many of those people had exposure to contexts other than Pakistan? You mentioned there was one lad who was doing engineering in Texas. How many other people were either from abroad or were exposed to different cultures and different kind of communities?
Uh, you mean that people who have been out of Pakistan
Yeah.
and they came here and
Either they are from Pakistan and they've travelled out, or they are from outside and they've travelled in.
no, I don't take it as a major factor. Yeah, but it's really alarming that a person with such a broad and moderate outlook,
Yeah.
he gets radicalized in such manner. So basically, it negates the concept that something is just wrong with this area. So, so it just shows that this is now international phenomenon, global phenomenon.
Yes.
As far as the narrative is concerned. Rest, yes, Pakistan provided a fertile land to cultivate the seed. In many terms, the religious inclinations, then Madaris, the biggest source of these radical elements. And although we cannot say that all Madaris are involved in it, but a large number of these Mujahideen, so-called Mujahideen,
Yes.
they have very close link with one or other madrasa.
How prevalent was the late 70s, early 80s Mujahideen influence in the people that you spoke to? Was there a strong link?
Yes, that was the foundation. Yeah. Because an organization was in place. At that time, they were doing the same acts against Russia. And they were being supported, they were being hailed. So that lot was there, that the fighting lot, warriors.
Yes.
trigger happy,
Mm.
and then deriving all their strength from religion,
Mm.
and the ultimate reward in the world hereafter.
Mm.
So it all was there, just the objectives changed,
Mm.
the enemy changed.
And in respect of their, religious goals, how influential is that in the overall process? So if you take, for example, Palestine as an issue,
Mm.
you have the problem that's been highlighted, that the Muslim oppression, and then you have the people who are causing that problem, and then you have the solution to the problem. How influential is religion in informing that decision or providing the impetus to act?
Religion is the main force,
Michael?
main deriving force.
Okay, okay, that's fine. I would really benefit from your notes because I think from there.
But here I would also like to make it categorically clear that it's all, to best of my knowledge and my understanding of the religion, it's all misinterpreted within
Mm, mm,
it. It should be and it can be confronted, it can be challenged.
yeah, yeah. I think that there's two distinct things going through my mind at the moment. Firstly, in respect of narrative and the ideology, the UK Prison Service is referred to as the National Offender Management Service, the acronym is NOMS. They have a dedicated team of imams and ulama who provide faith and pastoral care for their prisoners. For the past 2.5 years, they've been working on a counter-terrorism program internally, where they have taken all of the information, all of the intelligence, and all of the data that they have on the narrative and theological and jurisprudential arguments that have been espoused by these terrorists and provided a comprehensive rebuttal. So where they say, the Surah Anfal dalil, the counter narrative is another dalil. So they've got an opposing narrative, and that is in progress at this moment in time. They're implementing it as we speak. But the problem that I see with that is that it's too comprehensive. Too comprehensive. There's 9 or 10 modules, and the program is about that thick. And it requires an individual to have the ability to understand the intricacies of Quran and Hadith and the supporting sciences that that the ahkam are drawn from. And not everybody has that capability. Not everybody has that capacity yet. So the counter narrative that they've presented is credible, but it's too complex. But that's in the UK. In Pakistan, from my experience, I've only been here 7 weeks, far better than I do. But from my experience and of been speaking to people in the FIA, in NACTA, and all other kind of agencies,
No, there's
the issue that they have is one of fear from reprisal. That I understand that politicians are unwilling to publicly condemn terrorist organisations
Yeah.
because they're afraid that they will be killed or their families will be targeted,
Yeah.
or they're afraid to actively pursue them for the same reason. And I think that this culture of fear has gripped the vast community, whether it's the religious community, the political community, or even the economic or the social members who provide a silent support for such organisations for fear of being targeted. So if I was to stand on the pulpit in Jummah and say, for example, that the Tahrik-e-Taliban, what they've done is qat'an haram, shar'an haram, how long after that would I still be around? Would I be targeted like Mullah Fazl Rahman was targeted, or like other individuals? And this, I think, is a very real threat. How they overcome that requires a strategy, and I think that's going to be the interesting part.
For that matter, I think now the immediate solution is definitely strategic strikes.
Mm.
Immediate. But even that attempt cannot be successful without global cooperation. Because now, if we conduct this operation in Pakistan,
Mm.
the mastermind would, flee to Afghanistan and
Mm.
then onward as well.
This,
So unless they all make a concerted, coherent effort,
yeah.
then this is the second step. You are absolutely right that now if we even want to create a counter narrative, what would be the medium?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes, one medium can be social media. Even that is also traceable. You can
Mm.
link where it is coming from.
Mm.
And then even our all media channels, they are also scared.
Mm.
And you never see any debate.
Mm.
They debate any damn thing in this world.
Mm. Mm.
But you will hardly find this debate. Okay, these are four verses. Today we will focus on just one verse
Mm. Mm.
from where they are deriving their justification.
Mm.
Let's
Mm.
discuss.
Mm. Yeah.
And as far as the narrative is concerned, we have many such people. And even I would give you a reference of Dr. Khalid Zahid. You must see him.
Okay.
He's very clear about this narrative. He's amazing, and probably he's also visiting faculty in UK in some university. Very learned person, and absolute clarity on this narrative. But again, how can we use his expertise, or even can we use it?
Mm. Yeah.
But still, okay, that is there. But at state level, you have to give a clear position.
Mm.
Now it's not a time that you just keep awaiting and conniving the things. Now you have to take a position
Mm.
at state level. And the politicians, they will have to take this courage.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an interesting theory on terrorism. Is it a network? Is it a social movement? And I suppose the difference between the two is understanding it such as a military organisation as a network, and a social movement shares an ideology. Now, if it's a network, then you can destroy the network,
Yeah.
and you can take people away, which is where the military strikes would help. But then you would see the network dissolved. But if it's a social movement, you can't bomb that because it's an ideology that's shared by people who aren't in that network.
John, you will definitely have to make many sacrifices.
Mm.
No, it's not that simple. That we are also conscious of being protected and safe,
Mm.
and at the same time, we also want to do something and raise voice. You have to take it on, and otherwise, all children are being killed.
Mm.
Then why not if we are killed after saying something good?
Mm. So what?
Are they not being killed now?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Okay, if I'm safe, but the people, the our children in Peshawar, it's one and the same.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of chance.
Yeah.
Simply a matter of chance that I'm not there,
Mm.
or anywhere it happens. If I'm not there, it's a matter of chance.
So it's an interesting point. Okay. The individuals that you spoke to, did they have any particular group allegiance? Were they affiliated to any group that they identified?
These militant tendencies are mainly attributed to Deobandi school of thought.
Okay.
Deobandi, Wahhabi, and then there are some very extreme hardliners. There is a new group, it's a very small group, Takfir.
Okay. Mm.
But the larger offshoot is Deoband school of thought.
Do you know if any of these organisations are prevalent in Lahore? Are they operating in Lahore?
There are 60 proscribed organizations,
Okay.
and they are not even if functional openly,
Mm.
but yes, they do exist.
Yeah.
They operate.
Do you have any knowledge of who individuals may be? I mean, I'm thinking further, being able to speak to ideological supporters. Is there anybody that you think that might be worth being able to speak to?
If you want to take a version from other side,
Mm.
then you can make a try to see Hafiz Said.
Mm.
He would give you a jihad narrative.
I've spoken to his public affairs correspondent, Khalid Wali,
Mm.
and I tried to meet with Colonel Nazir as well.
Mm.
I wasn't able to meet with Colonel Nazir, but Hafiz Saeed gave me about an hour and a half. Not Hafiz Saeed, sorry. Khalid Wali gave me about an hour and a half, and we had a good discussion around the issues. And he provided some very interesting insights. But I'm yet to meet Hafiz Saeed. So I've got a foothold into Jama'at al-Da'wah. They did incidentally say that we have nothing to do with Lashkar al-Daiba. We're not Lashkar al-Daiba, it's a completely different organisation. Jama'at al-Da'wah is a humanitarian welfare and relief organisation.
This is also an issue that sometimes again we sponsor jihad
Mm.
and we call it a state sponsor.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then again we don't have any rollback strategy.
Mm.
So once you have trained a jihadi,
Mm.
a young man,
Mm.
then it's not within your control that he will only fight as per your direction.
Yes.
He is a fighter.
Yeah.
Now he is supposed and he is bound to fight.
Yeah. So, okay. So aside from Hafiz Saeed, is there anybody else that you think might be useful?
I would say for hardliner version and for the other version giving the counter narrative, Dr. Khalid said.
Okay. Brilliant. Right. Okay. I think that's it for me. It's been really valuable getting that insight from you. I appreciate your time, and I'm sure that there'll be more questions that come into my mind once I've read.
You can call me
Is that
anytime.
okay? I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I will send you the mail right
Yeah.
now.
Exactly. That's it.
So this R is capital?
No, it's just because of the print, so it came out like that. Okay, that terminates my interview with Asdullah Faisal. Date is still the 14th of January 2015. And that's it. Assalamu alaikum.